Morning everyone. Sorry I can't be with you, but hopefully this video is going to be almost as good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through how I approach webinars. Since March, when everything changed for everybody around the world, almost everything that I've been doing in terms of webinars, delivery about pricing, whatever it might be, has gone online. And the kind of stuff that I'm doing varies from around about an hour-ish through to a whole day session. So I've picked up a few tips along the way. I want to share those with you, and I'm going to break them down into two bits. One is I'm going to show you my setup, and then I'll run through some slides which has some tips about audience interaction. So the first thing I need to do is to swap to a different camera. Okay, welcome back. This is my setup. Most important thing starts here. It's a reminder to look at that flipping camera, because when we're presenting, we have a temptation to look at the screen in front of us. But it's when I look at the camera that it feels as if I'm actually engaging with the audience, and that's the important thing. Second thing is the quality of the camera. On laptops, the camera is only a 720p quality. That's okay, but it could be better. Now, if you've got a good camera that has webcam facilities, then you can connect that to your laptop if you need a higher resolution, or you can just get a webcam that sits on top of your screen. Next thing going down is where my laptop is. I've got it sitting on some boxes, and that's to bring the camera up to eye level, because a lot of presentations, the camera's down here and it looks like you're leaning into something, particularly if you've got lighting behind you, it looks very strange. You want the camera to be at eye level so that you're looking straight on into your audience. Even better is if it's just slightly up, it just raises the chin and it makes you look a little bit slimmer. Next thing is lighting. As you can see outside, it's actually getting quite dark. My lighting, like everybody's lighting, is in the ceiling. And what you want is some nice even lighting so that people can actually see you. Lighting makes a hell of a difference when it comes to picture quality. You just saw a little thing pop up on my screen a short while ago. It appeared here while I was talking. Normally, what I would do is I'd go along all of my different apps and turn off anything that generates a notification. I also tend to print out what I'm going to be covering, talking about during the day. You can have a speaker view, you can have multiple screens. I've tried all of that, but the problem with that is you end up trying to talk to the camera, and then you're looking across at what's happening on this screen, and then you're looking across at what's happening on that screen, and then what I want to do is just focus on the people in front of me, talk to them. I'd occasionally just glance down just to see where I'm up to if I need a reminder. I've got a drink over here because it's important to keep yourself well hydrated during the session. I tend to use a mouse when I'm moving forwards through the slides, but it's absolutely fine to have a clicker and to use that. For the purposes of this little bit to a separate camera, I've taken this off, but normally I will have a microphone, lavalier microphone on my lapel, just on my jumper, in order to improve sound quality, because using the speakers and the microphone in the laptop is fine, unless you're standing up and moving around and doing different things and getting closer and further away, and then the sound goes in and out. This helps to isolate from other sounds around, and it just helps to keep the audio consistent. Sharon, I'm sure you can recommend even better microphones than this. I've got a slide on the actual accessories that I use, and I'll bring that up in a moment. And that's largely my setup. The only thing I would add to this before I go off camera is this is my sitting setup. I just increase the number of boxes, get some other bits and pieces. If I'm going to stand up here and talk standing up, because sometimes you want a lot more energy and you're moving around talking to camera, and you simply take the whole of the same setup and just make it taller. Right, let's go back to the slides.
And here we are back again. Now, an online webinar is really no different to running an ordinary seminar. Face-to-face, online, doesn't make any difference. The basic principles are the same. You know, you still have the same objectives. You've got to make sure that you're engaging with your audience. You've got to make sure that you're delivering value. You've got to have a process to make sure that whatever your goals are, you're going to complete those goals. So that includes all the usual stuff, you know, figuring out how you're going to drive traffic to the event, and not just any traffic, but the right traffic. How do you register people so that you've got their email addresses and you can follow that up, and so that you know how many people are actually coming along? And you make sure that you absolutely deliver the very best, so the word of mouth works for you and you've got happy people who want to engage with you going forward. And then all the processes afterwards, you know, following it up and making sure that whatever those goals are that you've got, you know, you actually achieve them. So don't forget those basics. But on top of that, there are some extra bits and pieces that are worth thinking about when it comes to doing all of this stuff online. The first of it is stuff that I mentioned just a moment ago. I bought a Lavalier microphone. It was only about £15–20 from Amazon. I think it makes a difference. It just helps to make the audio a lot more consistent. I mentioned webcams. If you've got a good camera that has webcam apps, then you can use that. If you haven't, then it doesn't, less than £100 to get a pretty reasonable webcam and just attach it to the top of your laptop screen. And then I showed you the lights. I happen to be using ring lights. They don't have to be. They can be square. Really, all you want is just some consistent lighting, so that when you're talking to camera, as the light varies outside, or if you've got overhead lights, you're still being lit properly and people can see you. It doesn't look like, if you've got lights behind you, that you're in witness protection. I have a thing about using the virtual backgrounds in Zoom. They're okay some of the time, but if you move around, bits of shoulder disappear or your hair disappears and then it comes back again. And I personally find that distracting. You can improve it by getting a proper green screen and using that, but that costs money and you need space for it. And if you don't do any of that, then you can have real nightmares, like this particular photo of a friend of mine, Alistair, who was demonstrating just how badly screen backgrounds can go wrong. I have a preference for using as few words as possible on a slide. Now, I decided to get my phone out and give you a little bit of a tour using the camera on that and show you the various things. An alternative would be to simply take a photo of it as I have here and then talk people through it. When you're face to face, when you're standing in the room, if you've got some words on the slides behind you, there's energy in the room, you're moving around, people can see you, they're engaging with you, you know, there's eye contact. You stand a chance of maintaining that attention with them. As soon as you go online, that kind of breaks down. And if you're showing a slide that has just got bullet points, people stop listening to you and they just read what's on the screen. So wherever possible, as few bullet points as possible, and use pictures and things like that. It's important to keep the time. I use something called P-Clock, P-C-L-O-C-K. It's an app for the phone. You can set it to whatever time that you want. You know, so if a session's meant to last for 45 minutes, and set it to 45 minutes. Plus, you can set an amber and a red time. So at amber, 10 minutes it might change to amber. 2 minutes it might change to red. It just helps you to make sure that you know how long you've got left, and it's a really big thing that fills the whole of the screen. So you're not just checking on watches or anything like that. Then there's interaction. You can run polls inside Zoom. unless Microsoft have changed anything in the last week or two, you couldn't run a poll inside Teams. And it's a while since I've used Skype for Business, and I don't remember polls being inside there. And polls are a great way to involve your audience, particularly if you've got a larger audience. With audiences up to about 20, you can break out of, you can have a chat with people, you can ask them to put something into the actual chat side of Zoom. You can do those kinds of things. But when you start to get into larger groups, that all becomes more and more difficult. The problem with Zoom polls is every single time you start a new meeting, you've got to set the polls up from scratch. So if you've got a presentation with 5 or 6 polls in it, you've got to go on, set them all up. If you're presenting, you've got to remember, start looking around for mice, move in and out of things, or you need somebody to do the polls for you. And even then that can go wrong. On Saturday, I attended a webinar on making money from webinars. So these were professionals talking about the whole topic. And at one point, the lady wanted to do a poll, and question 3 came up and she wanted to be on question 1. Nobody could figure out how to sort it out. I use some software called mentimeter.com. You create polls within that and then embed them within slides. So I put a screen like this up, which tells people, go to menti.com on your phone. Menti.com is where the voting takes place. Mentimeter.com is the actual software. And then what they see is something like this. So I'll ask a question. Yeah, this is a real one that I use. It's about some research into what motivates people to conserve energy. And it's either because you save money, or you're saving the Earth's resources, or you're being a responsible citizen, or because your neighbors do it. And then the actual poll comes up. And you just saw those bars bounce up. And that's because if you type in 77, 18, 71, 4, you can vote. And you'll see the 7 increase to an 8. And down in the bottom right-hand corner, I can see that 14 people have voted. So if there are 18 or 20 people in the audience, I know how many more have got to come through. And it's all dynamic and happening in front of people. And I can leave this up for as long as I want. Whereas polls, the results of polls have got to be managed by somebody. At the end of the poll in Zoom, it's actually got to be managed, and somebody's got to present it back to the audience. I like to have interaction. So one of the examples is, I talk about this chap. He's Enrico Fermi. He was involved in the Manhattan Project. And I introduce him because there's a class of problems called Fermi problems that are named after him. So I'll talk a bit about that story. Then I will break out of screen sharing and I'll talk to the audience face to face, and I'll say to them, okay, now I want you all to write down a number for me. How many full-time piano tuners do you think there are in Greater London? And then I'll go around the audience one at a time and see what the numbers are. And the numbers often vary wildly from 5 to 5,000 or something. I'm actually not going to tell you how many there are, partly because I don't know. I don't think anybody actually knows. I'm not even going to tell you what the typical number is that comes up. We'll have to do that as an exercise together. But the point is, it's a way of breaking the monotony of just slides and going back into face-to-face and doing something a little bit different. Then the next part of all of this is how you actually approach the slides that you've got. I've mentioned about, I don't really like bullet points on slides, but you can actually go beyond that, particularly if you use the morph transition from one slide to another. And this is a set of slides that I just went through with a client this morning. So I was talking, not just one client, there was actually, the client is Vistage, and there was a room full of CEOs. This is one of the members of the audience. And what I wanted to illustrate was a pricing concept. So I showed them their website, and then I said that, well, the first thing that we want to do is let's zoom out so that we can see more of it. And the first pricing concept is, you've ordered your website from low price to high price, but maybe what we ought to do is swap the things around so that it's high price down to low price. Oh, but you might be thinking, we've got some much more expensive beds further down on the page. And if we change the sorting order so that we start with the most expensive beds, then it's going to look really expensive to customers. We'll be starting with the 11.95 and not the cheaper beds. But I say there's a way to approach that. What you do is you have some hero products at the top. So you put the expensive beds in the most popular section, and then you have the low price beds below. And what that does is it promotes this anchor to the customers. You know, they look at the 11.99 and the other numbers, anchor on those, and then the rest of the beds look cheap in comparison. Okay, that was a pricing thing. You've heard that before. But that interaction on the screen, the slides, the things moving around, that really generates a little bit of an audience buzz. And it's so much better than just slide after slide after slide and you talking. So they're my top tips. That's really where I'm going to finish. Hopefully that's been useful. This is what I do when I'm presenting a webinar. And based on the feedback that I'm getting, it does seem to make a difference. If anybody's got any questions about any of this, shoot me an email. If you do it on the CY email list, then everybody will see it and I'll reply to everybody, because if you've got that question, other people might be thinking about it too. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully I shall see you all next month. Cheerio.